There have been 13 reports and 600 recommendations on Tasmania's failing child protection system since 2005. Reviews are conducted and findings largely accepted, but professionals say the system remains broken. One told 7:30 Tasmania that the biggest threat to the protection of children in the state at the moment is the Child Protection Service itself. He's advocating a complete overhaul and taking dispute resolution away from the courts and into the hands of the public guardian. The government admits it doesn't always get it right and says changes are on the way.
I've got written apologies from Child Protection. It does make me feel a little bit easier in that I know I was right and I did nothing wrong, but it doesn't change the fact of the damage they've caused and offered nothing in support. It's cost me $30,000 to get my son back.
We're calling this man Joe. To talk to 7:30 Tasmania, we had to hide his true identity. Revealing it would lead to the identification of his son, which would breach the law, because his son was the subject of action by child protection authorities. In May last year, Joe's nightmare experience with child protection began.
They are destroying families, and the role should be to put families back together.
A child protection worker sent an email to a lawyer involved in a family court dispute, alleging Joe's son was at risk of emotional abuse from him. Within hours, Joe was stopped from seeing his son. How did you find out that this chain of events had unfolded?
Because of court documents and emails and times on emails, and black and white doesn't lie.
Joe discovered the child protection worker emailed a notification to the lawyer along with comment and opinion. The child protection worker had not actually seen Joe's son. She made the allegation based on the notification. After pursuing the chain of events, Child Protection apologised to Joe. Child Protection Services did not investigate the concerns or seek to verify the reported concerns. In one letter from the area director, Joe was told Child Protection appropriately made a decision not to investigate, but the actions of the worker meant Joe lost contact with his son for more than 3 weeks. In another letter, the Child Protection manager wrote, "The process was not followed and the documentation did not appropriately reflect the situation. I understand the stress and anxiety this has caused you, and on behalf of Child Protection Services, I sincerely apologise." For Joe, that's not good enough.
There's no support. They haven't knocked on my door. They haven't come to see my son to see whether we're okay. Nothing.
And Joe says the misleading document is still being used against him.
It's still being used in the family court to this day.
I think that he deserves an apology and he deserves to have his record cleared.
Joe sought an ex gratia payment from the government to cover his legal costs and compensation for the ordeal, but has been knocked back. Government backbencher Brenton Best says the man's treatment at the hands of a government agency has been unfair.
An order was taken out through legal means without really the proper research to back it. A decision was made and subsequently it was found to be an error. So, at the end of the day, he shouldn't suffer and he shouldn't be out of pocket, no.
Joe is now considering civil action.
There was an error made in this circumstance and Child Protection, I understand, have apologised to the family in question. Should that gentleman wish to take it further in terms of legal compensation, then that's a matter for him to bring forward to us.
He's not the only one frustrated with the system. Dr Bastian Seidel is a general practitioner in the Huon Valley.
We often don't know whether the notification has been received or whether the notification has been acted on.
So what you need to chase them up to know whether or not they've in fact followed through on your notification?
Yeah, that's correct.
Improved communication from the department was a key recommendation from a recent parliamentary inquiry.
In an area like this, if we haven't heard within 24 hours, the question is who is going to follow up on the notification. And if we don't know it's child protection, we have to make other arrangements to make sure that, the child potentially is safe.
While Dr Seidel says he has to chase up the authorities to see if they've acted on his concerns, in psychologist Tim Sanderson's experience, they were too quick to judge.
I objected to the fact that the children were taken away. I was told that they had been, and I was very clear with them, said I didn't think this was the right thing to do. And I was threatened by the caseworker.
Professionals who suspect any form of child abuse legally must report it. Tim Sanderson reported a couple he was counselling.
During the therapeutic process, it became clear that the children were being subject to observing a great deal of family violence, and on one particular occasion it was a significant issue.
We had a plan where we were resolving issues that we had around arguing, and we had a plan forward.
Brian, not his real name, has given permission for his psychologist, Tim Sanderson, to speak about the case. At any time, did it come out that the children had been subjected to any violence?
Absolutely not.
It is well documented that children can be damaged by witnessing it.
Are they bad parents? Not in my opinion. They have significant personal issues which we were working on and which were improving. No one was interested in that.
He says child protection removing the children was equivalent to cracking a nut with a sledgehammer.
Had the people involved, the caseworkers involved, actually done what they were supposed to do, which was an initial assessment of the situation, rather than making a judgment at a desk, which is really what I think happened, things might have actually taken a different journey.
So it's your opinion that they didn't in fact go and assess this family in their home?
That's not an opinion, that's a fact. There was no assessment.
Mr Sanderson says the three young boys were initially split up and placed in foster care.
People in child protection would object to the use of the word warehousing, but that's really, in my opinion, what happened. They were warehoused. I think the biggest threat to the protection of children in the state at the moment is, in fact, the Child Protection Service itself.
There have been many reports critical of Tasmania's child protection system. Child protection has been described as defensive and secretive, needs to better support families rather than remove children, and to use less adversarial practices prior to matters being escalated to court.
We know that where we can keep children safely with their families, that is the best place. We don't always get it right. No jurisdiction gets it right all the time.
Children's Minister Michelle O'Byrne says recent inquiries into child protection followed the high-profile case of the prostitution of a 12-year-old girl. She says such cases can lead to mistakes.
When there are very high-profile cases around child protection or the safety of a child, we do see almost a knee-jerk reaction from people who become very risk-averse.
It was horrendous. Horrendous for the family, expensive, incredibly expensive. The parents had to borrow money, which is often the case.
After 4 months of fighting, Brian and his wife had their children returned.
The Child Protection Service was going to court for a long-term order, and we were looking at the children being taken into care until they were 18. That was what they were after. The Child Protection Service dropped the case on the Friday. The court case was due on the Monday, and they gave it away.
They have emotionally harmed them more than we would ever have, and they have definitely established a distrust for authority.
Where there are no criminal allegations of abuse or neglect, Mr Sanderson is advocating the public guardian be involved in resolving disputes rather than the courts. As an example, he cites mental health cases.
There are very strict guidelines and requirements that have to be met, even in hours of a doctor making a decision to put somebody in hospital under an order. I think they've got 2 hours or something in which the paperwork has to be submitted. That kind of demand is about protecting human rights. Children don't have that.
We are more interested in pursuing a more tribunal-based role, which is similar to a guardian.
The Minister says changes to the legislation are coming.
We'll be introducing the amendments as recommended by the Legislative Review Committee in the November session, hopefully tabling the first day for debate that first week to make sure that we get it to the upper house and dealt with before the end of the year.
Also included will be funding for an advocacy role to help parents navigate the system.